Hey, what's going on? Welcome to AngularAir. I'm your host, Justin Schwarzenberger, and on today's episode, we are talking and checking out next-gen web application testing with Cypress IO. Should be pretty cool. Looking forward to it. So let's dive in. We've got a lot of panelists today with us, along with our guests. So let's say hi to everybody. We've got Alyssa with us. Alyssa, how's it going?
Hey, glad to be here.
Glad to have you. We've got Austin. Austin, what's going on?
Hold on, I'm connecting.
I'm waiting for the bong.
Oh, hold on.
All right.
There's no bonk. Bye.
Like, I don't know how you were here before you dialed up, but you're here, so that's awesome. All right, we got Jesse with us. Jesse, how's it going?
Hey, this is Jesse Sanders. Hey, Austin, welcome to the 21st century. Good to have you here.
Yeah, that was my CompuServe CD I was using.
AOL is way better, way better.
And we got Matt with us. Matt, how's it going?
Good, good. Really happy to be here.
We are happy to have you as a panelist. And then we've got Bonnie with us. Bonnie, what's going on?
I'm so excited. We're going to have such a good show. We're going to have so much fun today. I feel it. And also, I have the shirt for it, so we're going to rock.
Bonnie, I want you to introduce our guest today. Can you do that?
Okay, so yeah, can I tell the funny story?
Are you asking me or our guest?
Well, it's your show. Yeah. Okay. So it's a short, funny story. So what happened was I met so some of the meetup organizers and I trade guests sometimes, and I was introduced to Amir with the Cypress team, and I was super excited because everybody's been talking about Cypress, Austin and Jesse, and everybody's talking about how cool it is and great and everything. So I was like, oh, come on my show. And he said yes. And so when I sent him the link to book, I accidentally sent him Justin's link to book AngularAir. And next thing you know, Justin has this guy from the Cypress team. And I was bummed, but really it's happy because it's really great. So I'm a dork.
The wrong link.
I did. But the thing is, so luckily Justin is also a big Cypress fan. So all was forgiven.
So it was so awesome because all of a sudden I get this scheduled for an episode. And I'm like, yes, we're doing a Cypress episode. And then I start asking all the panelists, who hooked that one up? Because I didn't.
Yeah, that was me. Because I'm a dork. You're welcome. But it all worked out great because we're all here. And so because I accidentally did this, I got to bring a couple of my NG Houston friends over with me. So I snagged Jesse and Matt Lou, are not just NG Houston people, but they're actually friends. So it all worked out perfectly. And here we are. Yeah. And so the point is, we have Amir from the Cypress team, which is like so great because everybody's so excited about Cypress, and he's going to tell us everything that's going on. And I'm actually so just a little spoiler because I talked to Amir already. Not only is he going to tell us really great stuff about Cypress, but also cool stuff that's like they're getting even cooler, and they're doing so much work on the Cypress team that the pipeline of the features that I'm just going to shut up and let him tell you but it's cool. Trust me.
Oh, well, thanks for the introduction. Thanks for having me. I'm pretty excited to talk to you guys today. Thanks for having me.
Yes, we're definitely happy that you're here. So why don't we dive into the content and start learning about Cypress?
Sure. So let me go ahead and share my screen.
What is Cypress?
It's
a tree.
It is a tree. It is. Well, you know, before I guess dive into it, share my screen. I guess I can, you know, before I share my screen, I'll just give a little background. So Cypress, you know, first and foremost, is a free and open source tool for testing anything that runs in a browser. It's been around for a few years now, and it's gaining a lot of momentum. And the goal of it is to just make end-to-end testing and just testing on the web easier for everyone. And so that's one of the reasons why, you know, it's been growing in popularity, because now, you know, testing is becoming much more accessible and much more approachable to more people. Okay, so I'm going to now do a little share my screen. Okay, let me just start this presentation. So, you know, you already know the topic. And this is the least important slide, but if anybody has any questions, feel free to email me or DM me on Twitter. I'll be glad to help anyone. Okay, so let's before we kind of dive into what Cypress is, it's always good to step back and know the reasons behind something. And the primary use case for Cypress currently is end-to-end testing for the web. But when you mention end-to-end testing, people have already these preconceived notions about it. They say that, hey, I've been doing end-to-end testing. People have spent a lot of hours chasing flaky tests, or maybe the fact that it took so long to write end-to-end tests, increased the spending of the project, so it went over budget, or the fact that it was difficult to write end-to-end tests, the project was slowed down. And so when you hear these things, people are kind of hesitant to even approach end-to-end testing in the first place. One good way to kind of get a mental model of the world of testing is this testing pyramid, which is kind of an abstraction to help us think about the different types of tests we write. At the bottom, we have these unit tests. Developers love to write these because they're very small. They're very easy to reason about, and that's why we write a lot of them. And at the very top of the pyramid, we write a lot less unit tests. That's why they're at the top, and that's because they're more difficult to write. They're costly. They can be slower, and that's why they sometimes get ignored, or people just don't write them sometimes at all. But the thing about end-to-end testing is that this is the best type of testing for the business and for the end user, because it validates and verifies completely the experience of the end user. And the one thing you don't want to do is have your end users be the first ones to actually test your application. They could have a bad experience. They could go away and never come back, and that means you lose money. So this is the costliest route. It's just to not write end-to-end tests. Before we get into Cypress and the nitty-gritty details, I would like to talk about like the historical positioning of things. So, back, in 2005 and 2004 era, we had these nice frameworks like Django and Rails come out, and they made building web applications much more accessible to more people. That's why around this time frame, we got a lot of cool services and apps that came out, like, Twitter being one of them, which was like a Ruby on Rails app, and so on. And then, 1 year later, we had jQuery, which kind of normalized all these problems across browsers and made writing JavaScript much more easier, and more people started writing JavaScript because of it. But for the most part, jQuery was JavaScript to a lot of people. And then now now near our time, and we've had wonderful frameworks like Angular, Vue, React come out, since then. So this has been like the general progression of the web. And the general change here was that more complexity moved from the back end to the front end, because, what was it, around 2007, we had the iPhone come out, browsers started getting much better, internet speeds got much better, people's expectations of what software should be and feel like got better. So people were demanding much more rich applications, much more fluid UIs, and that's why we have these nicer frameworks for developing these nice user experiences. And with that, we do a lot more on the client side. So, to kind of paint this shift is that, a lot of the apps went from being stateless to being very stateful, and like Google Docs being a very good example of that, where there's just so much going on the client side. You have people collaborating on the same thing, and so on. So, and this is kind of how test automation world kind of maps into this historical line. Selenium came out in 2004, and it's a great tool, and it's one of the tools that the industry has been using for a long time to do browser testing. And things got improved around 2006, and around 2004 we got Cypress. And it's important to iterate this point here is that it's very important to do real browser testing, because your users use a real browser to test your app. So when the topic of DOM emulation and using things like JSDOM come up, I have to say that these methods are not particularly sufficient if you're trying to have a high level of confidence in the functionality of your app. So you need to use a real browser to drive real user actions so you can validate the real experience of your users. Okay, and that's these are some of the reasons behind the birth of Cypress, and it's all around a tool for testing anything that runs in a browser, and it's easy to get started. You just do npm install Cypress. That's all you need to do. There's no additional things you need to install. And once you do that, you get everything you need to get started. And underneath, it's using familiar frameworks and tools like Mocha, Chai, and Sign-On. Mocha for the testing framework, and Chai and Sign-On for assertions and stubbing and mocking and so on. So things are not foreign.
Amir,
yeah, go ahead.
Can you kind of explain the concept of like what Selenium's doing and then what Cypress is doing in terms of like, what does it mean for us to test our end-to-end stuff in like a browser? Like, it's just the basic concept of what's going on there. Is it running and submitting forms, or what's going on there?
Yeah, so I mean, would you like some comparisons between Selenium and Cypress and how they work underneath, or?
Just to explain for our viewers who may not know this idea of what it is, like we write a unit test, right? And we're like, we got a function and we want to send it some data and see what it comes back. When we're talking end-to-end test or testing in the browser, and you mentioned like JS DOM and things like that, like just the basic concept of what's going on. Is it running our app and then trying to do some actions as if a user's doing it?
Yeah, so you've kind of hit it on the mark there. So, let's say you're Amazon.com and you got this nice shopping cart system set up. How do you go about testing that, right? How can you guarantee that when a user clicks add to cart, the product actually ends up into the cart? And then how can you validate that the user can fully go through your checkout process? And to do that, as a real user, you need to use a real browser. These are complex pieces of software. And that's why you need to test against the exact client that your user is using. So we would drive browser actions which replicate the same actions as the user using a tool like Cypress or Selenium. And that's kind of like the reasoning behind using a real browser. Is just it all comes back to acting like your user and testing like your actual end user. And we're just driving direct actions onto the browser.
Awesome.
Does that clarify things?
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Amir, I have a question as well. Why is it that Cypress is better than Selenium in doing these types of tests?
Oh yeah, you guys are getting ahead of me.
If you're gonna cover it later, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure that doesn't get brushed over, because I think it's the why Cypress is important and why I might choose Cypress over any other testing tool.
Great. Yeah, I'll definitely cover that. Yeah, I mean, I actually had some slides on this, but I removed them not to kind of detract from the topic. But I'm glad you brought it up, and I can cover that right now, actually. So we can just dive right into it. So there are fundamentally the architecture of Cypress is different from Selenium. So the way Selenium works is that you write your tests in any language you want. It could be Python, JavaScript, so on. And then there's the Selenium driver, which acts as a proxy between your tests and the browser. So your test will tell the Cypress driver, this proxy, this middleman, what to do in the browser on the behalf of your tests. And this can since these two things are separate systems, this can lead to flakiness because they can get out of sync from each other, and your tests and Selenium and WebDriver, they don't always know exactly what's going on in the browser. They can't react to it quickly enough. They're always on the outside checking in. They can essentially just query the browser. They're not in the browser. They're not fully aware of what's going on in the browser at the point in time you need them to know. And this is vastly different from the way Cypress works. Cypress runs within your browser. It runs within the same run loop as your application. So it lives right alongside your application. So as events are happening inside the browser, Cypress can know immediately about them, and it can react to them, and it can take action accordingly. So that's kind of like the fundamental architectural difference between Selenium and Cypress. This isn't to say that Selenium is a bad tool or anything like that. That's not really the case. It's just that Cypress's architecture I think lends itself to making testing of modern web applications significantly easier. So does that help kind of paint the picture?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Of course. Okay, and we'll touch up on this topics as we get kind of towards the middle of things. But yeah, I mean, in the previous slide, we installed Cypress, everything's good, and now you got Cypress up and running. You bring it up, and this is how it looks like. First and foremost, when you're developing with Cypress on your day-to-day basis, it's this GUI application. It's an Electron application, and the GUI is going to show you all the tests you have within your project. And you can go ahead and click any of these spec files, and Cypress will bring up a Chrome browser, and it will start running those tests that you've written. So I have a little video here, but it's fine. I actually would like to just show you the thing, live. So let's go ahead here. We have this Cypress kitchen sink project, which kind of demonstrates the various functions and commands Cypress offers. Let me zoom that up for you. So I already have like this is a completely empty npm project. Just make a folder, do npm in it, that's it, and then just install Cypress as we talked about. And then all you have to do is just bring up Cypress. The first time you run Cypress, we will automatically populate your project with some example spec files to kind of help you get started and kind of learn things. But this is all you have to do to start Cypress, which is just run the open command. So let's hit enter there so we can bring it up. Okay. All right. So as I said, this is how it looks like. We got a nice GUI with all the spec files in our project, and we can actually go to our editor here. Let me bring that over. And this is the kitchen sink. So when you run Cypress for the first time, we're automatically going to create this Cypress folder in your project. We kind of bootstrap it with the default directory structure. But your tests are going to be in this integration folder. And these are the sample test files we populate automatically. And so let's click on this one. And this is the action spec. This is just, and we'll run this live. But this is testing, the type command that Cypress offers, the focus command, and we'll see that in a sec. Let me zoom that up for you guys a bit here. Okay. So, and here's the action spec test right here. Let's just bring that up and run it. So a full version of Chrome is going to pop up right here. And we're going to load your application on the right-hand side. And on the left-hand side and kind of all around, this is the Cypress UI. On the left-hand side, this is what we call the command log. It shows every single test that's running against your application. And then it's going to show you if they passed or failed and give you more information about it. So this whole spec file passed. But we give a lot more information here. So you can go ahead and click on any of these tests. And you can hover over each command Cypress executed to learn exactly what happened. So for example, we want to test the type command. The type command is so you can type things into input boxes. So the first thing we have to do is we have to first visit our application. So we use the Cypress visit command, and it just tells you the exact URL it's going to visit. Great, that's done. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to get at this input box. So for example, we're going to get this email input box right here. And then we're just going to type the email address in there. And so over here, for example, we're typing fake@email.com. The cool thing is I can actually see the before and after state of this command taking place. So what Cypress does is for each command, it's going to take a DOM snapshot. In this way, you can actually kind of like historically travel through the test itself by just kind of scrubbing against all these commands right here. So we can see, okay, it typed fake@email.com here. Then it's going to make an assertion that the thing that we typed into this input box actually got typed in there, and now that text exists there.
What I like about is that, it's tough when we write tests, right? And we have to like debug the steps in the test and trying to figure out, did I set this input right? Did I do this stuff? And it seems like with this and with the before and after, it's such a useful tool to be able to go, okay, now I can really dial in my test and understand what's going on without having to go through the whole process of mentally walking through it.
Exactly. Yeah, like the whole point of this is so that you kind of have this one window where you're kind of solving problems and figuring what truly happened. And you don't have to, go all over the place investigating. We kind of just wanted to show you, oh, something failed or something passed, and know all the details about it. So yeah. So over here, we kind of went over, that this is the command log and these are the various commands that are being executed. But one cool thing over here is you can actually, pin the command, so you can maintain that state of the DOM at this point in time in the test. So it's good for introspection and things like that. And we also have this thing called the Selector Playground, and it's this little crosshair icon here. You can select that, and you can actually just hover over any element in your app, and it will kind of tell you the selector for it. So this is helpful when you're trying to figure out what the exact selector for something is in your app. So you can copy paste that into your code to kind of help you select the element you want to make an assertion against. Yeah, so this is a pretty simple spec file. These are pretty simple commands. Click. Scrolling, selecting, and things like that. But this kind of gives you the little gist of the UI of Cypress. And if you're getting started with Cypress, I highly suggest you kind of just browse through these various spec files, because they literally show you what every single command in the Cypress API does and how it can be used in your tests.
Yeah, it's a really nice interactive IDE for doing stuff. Do you know if any like Selenium or any of the other tools, do they offer anything like this? Because I don't think I've ever seen anything, such a nice interactive IDE to be able to do this.
I haven't seen anything widely used. I think I've seen some, custom side project type implementations here and there, but I can't really recall anything that's in wide use.
Yeah, and my understanding is with Selenium, because of the way that it works, I cannot open up the dev tools or anything like that would allow me to actually interact with the testing. Yeah, no, I'm glad you brought that up. So I actually had a slide for this, but I'm glad you brought it up so we can kind of demonstrate that here. So tests are running, everyone's happy, everything's going great, and so we'll just let that test pass, and I'll just stop this test right here. You can click something here, and let me just bring up, oops, not that. I'll just do that. My shortcut keys are different. Okay, so as you're selecting these commands, we're actually outputting information about that test or that command into your console.log, so you can kind of know more information about it. Here's the actual element that this command applies to, and so on. If you click an assertion, it'll tell you what the assertion was made against, the information just about the assertion itself. This is nice, but remember, what did I just do here? I just brought up DevTools while I'm testing, and my application's also right here. So I can use DevTools the same way I use DevTools when I'm just playing with my application normally. So I can do all my debugging here as well. So this allows for an elevated level of debugging while you're testing in your local workflow. This is it's DevTools. You get everything you want. Yeah.
I know that I've personally used this as an excuse to not write end-to-end tests at times, right? The pain of not being able to do something like this. So for me, I look at this and see this solution and go, okay, well, now I'm out of excuses, because now I have this utility that's going to allow me to do this stuff that's really painful, which is almost like debugging your end-to-end test, right? So yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, exactly. And this is also one of the benefits of of the test runner existing alongside your application, right?
because you can leverage all the benefits people are used to of a normal browser. It's all right here. It's all familiar. So I think it's another aspect that people enjoy a lot.
So I noticed
Yeah.
like the language. Are we writing like behavior-driven type of syntax here, the same way we've maybe done it with other end-to-end tests, or is it like test-driven type of syntax in terms of saying, like, do we say, I expect this to happen, or are we saying, if I open the order form and I click on this, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's kind of like, I guess we can look at an example right here. So we inputted this email into this input box, and then I'm saying should have value, fake@email.com. So this is kind of the language that's used. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of like you're just kind of typing out your expectations of what's going on. And it's all about explaining declaratively the actions your users have taken in your application. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks.
And we'll get to why that is the case, why it's kind of declarative. And it also has to do some with the architecture of Cypress. Okay, so let's see. I think I actually have more to show, so let's just do that. Yeah. So I'm going to end this. So this was our kitchen sink little project, kind of help people get started. But we also have this to-do MVC app, and I apologize ahead of time that this is the React version of that. Yeah, so I'm going to bring up the to-do MVC app. So if you're not familiar with to-do MVC, it's just like a sample to-do list application that's used as like an example project for various things to kind of compare frameworks or things like that. So yeah, so this is, and I just brought up the Cypress test for that application, but notice I'm getting a warning here, and Cypress is saying, hey, we couldn't verify that your application is running. And Cypress would be correct because I have not started my application server. But the reason I did this was to point out that kind of like our philosophy with what Cypress, or how Cypress kind of operates, is we always want to be helpful to the user. We always want to have these helpful messages, helping the developer know what went wrong, what is the problem. Because imagine if we didn't have this warning message here, and you're like clicking your test and you're trying to run your test and like it's not working, So we like to kind of be proactive about helping the user. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to
hold on, Amir, I have to jump in and say that we love you guys, because I just, even the error page is like, this yellow is so calming. Like, don't worry, it's fine. And whoever wrote these error messages, they're just so zen, it's like everything, you're in a safe place here with the warning pages and the error messages. So I just have to say thank you.
Oh, of course. Yeah, our test runner team does a fantastic job with this stuff. And they're actually working hard on vastly improving how we communicate and present error messages. So be on the lookout for that for upcoming releases.
I would like to put in a feature request for more emojis.
More emojis. Well, we're a fan too, so I'm sure you'll start seeing those somehow.
Well, tell them we love them.
For sure, for sure. Okay, so let me go ahead and run this little to-do MVC test right here. So, this is our to-do MVC app on the right-hand side. We're just adding to-dos, marking them complete, editing them, clearing them, all this stuff, all the different permutations that, an application of this nature would need to be tested against. So, yeah, so this is like a real-world type of application. And it has some more advanced tests. We'll just, let things run, and as it's running, we can still play around with the UI, which is nice. So, one of the things that you have to do, when you bring up this to-do list application, is we want our cursor to be focused on this input box, right? So once the user comes in to this, we can just start typing in to-do items. And to do that, we can just use the typers focused command. So if we actually go to our test for this, let me bring that up. integrations. There we go, right here. This is the very first test we, there we go. It's actually this one, this test right here, just a one-liner. So how do we go about doing this? If we want to test that this input box is focused upon entering the app, well, we just use the Cypress focused command, and this will give us the actual element that's currently focused in the DOM, and then we can go ahead and make an assertion against it. One of the things I would like to point out about the Cypress API is that it's very English-like. It's very you can almost assume the commands you can use, and users really enjoy this. And there's literally a command for every possible thing you can imagine. So yeah, it's we grab the item that's focused, and then we can make an assertion on it.
I noticed that that's a JavaScript file. Is there TypeScript support?
Yes. So we do ship Cypress with types. So I haven't seen anybody like do .ts files for it. But for example, if I'm doing like, if I type out the same thing, and then I do should, I'm going to get auto completion here from the type. Yeah.
I heard that the source code for Cypress was CoffeeScript.
You've been looking. Yes. So
All right. So Austin has this really unexplainable hatred for CoffeeScript, and honestly, I think it's perfectly valid thing to use. So we just throw that out there as some support for you.
no, it's fine. I mean,
nemesis, so they have to pick on each other.
Yeah, don't let Austin rattle you.
No, it's fine. So CoffeeScript, Cypress, Brian Mann, the original creator of Cypress, the founder of the company, this started back in like 2014. TypeScript wasn't a thing. And it was the days of CoffeeScript. And so at the time, it was a great choice.
I just do have to correct you there. For the record, TypeScript was a thing.
Well, I don't think it was as popular as you think it was at that time.
Let's see. TypeScript.
All right, so
2012.
2012. Yeah.
So it was still a new baby at that point.
Yeah. It was its infancy. That's when like the initial prototypes were being rolled out. So it was in CoffeeScript, but we're actually moving away from that, and we're fully embracing TypeScript. We're using it not just in the test runner in our open source product, but we're also using it in our backend as well. And I've personally been enjoying it a lot. It's I find it really helpful, and I'm finding myself needing to write less unit tests because the types give me a lot more confidence, and that's really attractive to a testing company and someone that cares about software quality. Okay, so this was like a quick little test, but this is a full-on application, and everything I'm showing you here, we have dedicated repos on GitHub for all this stuff. So you can just look up Cypress example to do MVC, and you'll get the whole repo for this, and you can go through all the tests yourself and play around with it, and kind of use it as some learning material. Let's see. Yeah. Okay. I have slides that kind of dive deeper into some of this stuff, so I'll get back to that, and we'll have some reasons to come back to the live demo. Okay. All right. We already saw that. Okay. So one of the things that you kind of saw was that the tests run really fast, and they can almost run as fast as your application because, as I said before, Cypress runs within the same run loop as your application, and it can react to everything that's going on in the browser just as fast. So you're going to get a lot faster test run times. And these were kind of like some of the visuals I created for describing the architecture. And this is again to iterate that Cypress runs in the same browser as your application, same run loop as your application. And the benefit of that is that you have native access to the DOM of your app. To the DOM and your app, I should say, which means you can programmatically mutate your app and do things in your app. And this is something that's
not really possible in other frameworks. So one example of that is, almost every program requires authentication. That usually means driving a login UI. You got to type in the username, you got to type in the password, and you got to click login and then see if it worked, right? And you need to do this for a lot of different views of your app, right? You need to authenticate the user to do something. But do you really need to test the UI? Do you need to drive the UI to bring up the authentication state every single time? I mean, that's a waste of time, right? Because you just did it in one test. Why do you need to repeat it over and over and over again? So what you can do is just have one test that tests your, let's say your login UI here. Types in the username, password, clicks login, and then boom, now you've tested it, you're done. From that point on, you can programmatically mutate the state of your app because you have direct native access to your application's code to authenticate the user programmatically. Then once you do that, you don't need to keep testing the UI of your login. And this is going to save you a lot of time. And you can abstract it all away in one little pretty function, and that's just going to be a productivity boost overall. Another thing that Cypress enables is this concept that we like to call component testing. My colleague Gleb Bomtov, which I think some of you know, he's taken the time to write a lot of these framework-specific component testing libraries. The React one has some recent improvements, but we have it for Angular and all other frameworks. I've personally worked on the Vue one, and we can kind of dive into that for a sec.
You have to give Gleb a big hug for us because we know him and we like him a lot.
Yeah, definitely.
Tell him we said hi.
He's awesome. We'll do for sure, and I'm sure he's listening. So.
Hi, Gleb. We love you.
There you go. Hi, Gleb. So, anyways, this is the link, I believe, to the Vue one in this case. But they're available for every single application, and you can kind of search for, in this case, would be Angular, Cypress Angular unit test, and you can give that a try and give us feedback, because this is something we're interested to kind of moving into the core of Cypress. But before I get ahead of myself, I would like to kind of dive in and talk about what component testing is and what it allows you to do. So with component testing, usually when you're testing your application in Cypress, you're kind of loading your entire app into the browser, right? But with component testing is, well, what if you could just, mount only a particular component, a specific component to the browser DOM, not your whole application, just that particular DOM that you're component that you're interested in, and then you can run Cypress tests directly against just that component. And this is awesome because it's kind of like unit testing at the component level, but you're doing it in a real browser. So one example of that, for example, and this works similarly in all frameworks. Up top, the Cypress, framework X unit test library is going to give you this mount function, and then you're just going to import in your component, and then you're going to use that mount function to mount your component, and this mount function will mount the component you specified right into the browser DOM, and then that's it. You're done. Now your component exists in the browser, and you can just go about your day as you have been, writing normal Cypress tests against it. So, yeah.
Amir, if I can make a question, this is super cool. I didn't know about this unit test part of Cypress, these plugins that you're showing. But what if your component has dependencies, or you need to mock some data as input for them?
Yeah, so I guess it kind of depends on how the component is architected, it's written. But you can still use the same mocking capabilities that Cypress provides you. You can kind of now just see the whole window as your component, and so you can also pass in like your normal props and things to your component as well. With this particular example isn't showing it all right now. But if you look in the README for your particular framework's unit test library, you will see some examples where I can say like my component, then pass in all the props for it and things like that. So you can kind of prepare your component before it's available to be tested.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and these component testing libraries, these are currently unofficial libraries. That's why they're not under the Cypress flag currently. But the way we like to do things is kind of experiment outside, and then if things are validated by our users, people seem to love them, people seem to be using them, then we start thinking about how do we move this stuff into the core. And this is one of those things. So in the future, potentially we can imagine that we provide a sci.mount function, and then that's it. And then you can pass in your component, my component, and it could be maybe for any framework, and then we just magically handle it. Like, what if that's a possibility? So it's things like that we think about.
Okay. Wow, that's really super cool. That just recently hit, right? I think we talked a couple weeks ago, and that still was not available.
The side.mount?
That whole unit testing aspect.
Yeah, I mean, this has been kind of out, for maybe a little over a year. It's in its infancy. The ones that I've seen that have really been used are the React and the Vue ones. So I'm hoping being on this podcast, the Angular community will kind of notice this and give these a try, because if you guys do, we would love to collaborate with you and kind of improve things for the Angular framework when it comes to component testing. Yeah.
So are you able to write these component tests, this code and position that like next to our components? Because I started thinking about something like with Angular Playground, right, which is used to work on components in isolation and take the same sort of concept, but allow us as developers to build those components. And it's nice to have like the things that do that next to that component. So say we move a component, we get rid of it and delete it later. We can delete all the tests and everything along with it. Is that, because I know earlier you showed when you start up Cypress project and you get a separate directory for the integration or for the end-to-end test, right? Do these get to, are they able to live next to our components in this scenario?
I can't imagine that. I guess I would have to kind of see a proof of concept. But the Cypress tests have to live in the Cypress directory that you've specified. It's configurable. But I don't imagine seeing the tests alongside the code for the component. But that is an interesting take. I think it's kind of like a similar concept in Vue, where they have component files and they just put everything for that component relevant to that component in one file, which I think is a great concept. But currently, that's not something that I see it being able to see that we can implement it easily. So yeah.
Cool.
Okay, so yeah, so if you guys have any more questions about this stuff, please reach out to us, because we really want to improve this.
How much does it cost?
Okay. What the unit testing libraries?
No, Cypress.
Oh, well, you just have to send a big fat check to Amir Rustamzadeh. No, Cypress is Cypress and Test Runner is absolutely free. It's open source and it's MIT licensed. So, and it's something we can,
with that whole npm install bit, but
yeah, it's and no, but this is a valid question. Sometimes people get confused because they come to our site and they see this pricing link here and they think Cypress costs money. No, Cypress the Test Runner will always be free, and we're trying to do a better job of communicating the difference between the Cypress Test Runner, which is a completely different product than from our Cypress dashboard service, which also has like a free generous plan, and we're planning on improving that too. But you can always install Cypress, use it free forever. You're all good. MIT license. Yeah, like we're big fans of open source, and that's we see ourselves as custodians of this project. So the answer to that question is no, it's free. So the other topic that's really big with Cypress is automatic weighting. So a lot of the times, if you're used with other frameworks, you typically would have to, put in waits and sleep commands like, oh, hey, wait the 10 seconds or 5 seconds or whatever, and then you can make another assertion on the DOM. With Cypress, you don't do that. So if you look at like the code base here, there's no like timeouts, there's no sleeping, there's no that kind of stuff. Because what Cypress does is that it will automatically wait. It will retry your assertion over and over again until the state in the DOM that you're expecting comes to life essentially, and then you can make that assertion. It does that by default. It does that for 4 seconds. That's configurable, but you don't have to do anything. You don't have to tell it to wait for something to take place. It automatically does that out of the box, and this is great because it takes a lot of the guesswork out of it. And we found that 4 seconds is kind of like a sweet spot time frame, but as I said, it's configurable. So man, let's see if I can demonstrate that.
Is that configurable per test?
I'm sorry, what was that?
And is that configurable per test?
So yes, I believe. I think you can do it for each command, yeah. And you can also do it globally too in your Cypress JSON config file. Okay, so let's see. Yeah, I already got my app spec running here to do MVC app. So we had this, this little test right here, and maybe I'll just do an only tag on that. So we only run this guy. Great, so we're only running this test. Everything passes, great. So let's now go ahead and break it. Then we can do that by going right here. Okay, so this input box is supposed to autofocus by default. Well, let's make that not the case. So you can see here, Cypress is like automatically waiting. It's like, hey, I'm waiting for the input box to be focused, and I'll run it again, and it's in this blue state. It's waiting. 4 seconds passes, and then it's like, hey, I waited long enough. The input box never got focused. Your assertion has failed. And this is how things look like when an assertion fails. And you can see like we're providing you very readable messages, and we write a lot of these by hand, and we're working on vastly improving this too. But we're not ever going to show you like gibberish in this box here when things go wrong. We always want to easily communicate the error to the user in a way that's consumable.
And is that the time up there at the top, the 4.39?
Yeah, yes, this is the full time frame. So this is like with us visiting the app and then running the focus command and things like that. So like 3.5 seconds for things to get started and visit the site, and then the remaining 4 seconds is like the time frame we waited to make sure for this assertion to be validated. So that's how automatic waiting works. And as I said, it's configurable. So and if I go put this to true now, we run it again, and the world is back to normal. Okay, and so with Cypress and with any good testing framework, you need to have really nice, easy to use stubbing, mocking, and spying. So let's kind of take a look at that. And one of the common use cases for stubbing and mocking and so on is stubbing out API endpoints, right? And to do that, it's very simple. So first we go ahead and start our mock server by using the CY server command, and then we describe the route we want to play with essentially. And over here we're actually not doing mocking. I'm kind of getting ahead of myself, but actually, so stepping back. Before we go into stubbing and mocking, I want to talk about the concept of aliases. So we can go ahead and alias API route like so. So we can say CY.route,
whenever there's a GET request to our to-dos endpoint, detect that, and we're going to alias that route and that request as to-dos. You can give it any name, so it can be as Bob, as something else, right? And then we can say, okay, now let's go visit our app. So we're going to use cy.visit, and that's the root of our application. So great, now we're at our app. And then we're going to do Cypress.wait. And then we're going to say, hey, wait on the to-dos request to be done. So when our app first loads, it's going to probably automatically make a request to the to-dos endpoint to grab all the to-dos, let's say, for our to-do application, right? Well, we don't have to be like, okay, now I'm on my app, and then I'm going to do c.wait, 10 seconds, and hopefully the request had completed within that 10-second time frame. You don't have to do that, do that thinking. All you got to do is just tell Cypress to wait for this to-dos endpoint to be done. And once it's done, you're all good. You can continue and start making assertions on your application now that that request is completed and has mutated the state of your app and so on.
So Amir, the one thing that's not clear here with the route that you are aliasing, what does get to-dos actually return here?
Yeah, so well, in this case, I'm not demonstrating that. But when we get to mocking and stubbing, we'll see. But in this case, I'm only aliasing this route. I'm not stubbing or mocking or anything. I'm just saying, hey, we're going to alias this route under this name, so then I can refer to it throughout my test.
Oh, so that's actually still going to allow it then to hit the backend server.
Exactly.
Perfect.
Yeah. So it's just kind of like, naming your requests, so you can wait on them easily. And so that was my bad. I got ahead of myself there. But now if we
Amir,
yeah, go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt you again. I'm assuming this wait has some kind of timeout or something. There is any way to configure a different timeout if you have like a long running request or something like this?
Yeah, I forgot the default timeout for these months. I have to look it up. But yeah, for everything there's like default same timeouts. And we can look at our docs shortly to kind of confirm that. But yeah, it's not gonna wait forever to make sure this happens, right? Okay. So let's look at the next thing. So, this is just the same example, but now we're doing a post request. So just demonstrating that you can configure the route based on the request method. And when we're doing a post against to-dos, instead of a get, we can name that a new item, a new to-do item, and then we can use that alias again to make assertions on it. And we can say, okay, hey, the request body should contain these things: a title, which is, the to-do item, and then, the state of that to-do.
What about GraphQL? How does this
yeah,
work with GraphQL?
So we currently have, I don't have an example here, but there is, if you go to our, let's see, let's go to our docs. If we go to the plugin section, and I suggest everyone kind of like check out our plugin section. There's a lot of cool stuff being done by our community. And you type in GraphQL, and there we go. Cypress GraphQL mock. And this is done by Tim Gersier. He's another one of our engineers here. He's an awesome guy. And he's like a GraphQL aficionado. So he's created this library to make mocking GraphQL endpoints simpler. And so you can kind of see you still use the CY server command, and you can use my mock GraphQL command here to mock out the schema that you want. And
that is beautiful.
Yeah, it's awesome. And then, if you're using GraphQL, I suggest looking into this because it's awesome.
GraphQL is the future.
Yes. And we're starting to use that in our backend as well. So.
You know, there was like a year ago, I was talking to Austin, and I was like, hey, Austin, GraphQL is really cool. And you know what he said? What's GraphQL? I don't know what you're talking about, Molly. He was like, yes, you did. The first time I told you GraphQL, you were like, what are you talking about?
No, I did not say what is GraphQL. I did not say that. I have been tracking it from the beginning. And
somebody's blushing.
I was like, hey, Austin, we should use GraphQL. And he was like, nah. No.
I was skeptical, as everyone should be. Proceed
As
with
you
caution.
always are for everything.
But I'm really happy that you're on board with the GraphQL train now. But I agree with you. GraphQL is awesome. So, but I couldn't pass up an opportunity to give you a hard time.
I just want you all to know, even like going out to eat with Austin is like this. You know, it's not just it's not just frameworks or code or tech things. So just
when did we go out to eat, Alyssa?
Oh, I've been with you in many of a hotel. I've seen your pickiness.
All right, so mocking. Would you like to show us some mocking?
Yeah. So another thing you want to do is like stub and mock. So this is an example of a stubbing a response. So over here we're stubbing this get to dos route to return an empty array. So what does your application do when there are no to do items, right? That's a state you would like to test. So that's just the third argument here. You just pass in whatever the response should be, and that's it. That's how you would, stub the response for this route.
And then anytime that gets called, then that's what's going to happen in our app. So if it gets called like 3 times during this test run.
Yes, exactly. Unless you go and update the stub. Yeah.
Okay, I just need to pause on that really quick because you got one line in there, right? Well, 2 lines. I guess you're doing the server and then the route, right? But man, that is so easy or so clean to. I mean, I just think of the pain it's been to try and handle mocking out, especially these API calls or these back-end calls in end-to-end testing, and squeeze in our mock data or our scenarios just to have that test run. Especially when you start thinking about my app may make 3 different calls. And for this test, I need to kind of have all 3 of them blocked, even though I'm testing one spot of my app, right?
Exactly.
So how easy is it for me to get in there and control that stuff? And this just seems pretty straightforward. And
yeah, you would just take those 3 requests, declare, UCY route to, alias them, stub them, whatever, and then you can just wait on them how you will. It's all kind of handled underneath the complexity of that. And as you said, it's really simple. Just 2 lines here. I've fully stubbed an API route. And I can start playing with it.
Now, what sold me the first time when I started this up was the spying. So when I let's say I'm not stubbing, but when my component's like running and it's making requests, being able to know when that request came back for Cypress to reevaluate was like the money. That is like one of the most difficult things when doing mocking of like real world apps is like, how long do I wait for my server response? And you'll see like tests that take like 30 minutes to run because they have to wait like a minute to make sure their request came back on time. After I saw that, I was like sold on the spot. I was like, where do I put the money?
Exactly. No, you've hit it on the mark there. And that's why Cypress is a great tool for doing API testing in itself. So even if you're not like testing your whole UI with it, if you just want to test your API, it's also a great tool because the API for it is so simple and usable. Okay, so another way we can do this type of stubbing is we can use fixtures, right? We don't always want to type the whole data response right here in our tests. What we can actually do is we have this fixture directory, and you can configure this in your project directory, just called fixtures, and you can have like, here's this example JSON over here we filled up. And so if I want to have this route respond with the data of that fixture, I would just do fixture : example, fixture : my to-dos, fixture : whatever. So it's like a nice little way of referring to the fixtures you have configured in your project.
Yeah, to me, this is the real money right here, because the challenge in testing applications is not just the simple use case, but all the edge cases. And how do I find a product that has a quantity less than 10? And so I feel like the frailty of like Selenium based tests is that I didn't have a way to really do that well. And so what I'd have to do is go create a new product, set its quantity to less than 10, and then go locate it and then be able to test it. Where now I could use Fixtures to be able to say, hey, I can load that product in exactly the way that I want it, and then be able to see how that interacts with the UI.
Exactly, yeah. And that's kind of one of the things that I think differentiates Cypress from other also great frameworks, and it's one of the things that attracted me to it personally, even before I worked at Cypress, was just the overall user experience, like the developer experience. It's kind of like all those, as you said, all those little tiny edge cases, all those little wrinkles and cracks that developers need to deal with when they're doing stuff like this. It's kind of already been thought through in a thorough manner. And as you're using Cypress and learning more and using it more, you kind of start seeing them all and start kind of appreciating it, because it's really solved like all your problems, not just one of your problems. Yeah. So, it's all good. This is a quick preview of stubbing and mocking and so on. But, all of this, it kind of results into another nice thing that Cypress provides, which is, you're going to have flake-free tests. They're going to be much more consistent. They're going to be much more reliable. Now, you could potentially have flakes, but that could just be like, writing tests wrong or some other things in your system. Like if you're not mocking your backend and there's something wrong with your backend, that could lead to flakiness. But that doesn't mean the tool is the cause of the flakiness, which could be the case with other frameworks. And one of the ways that we kind of ensure consistent deterministic execution of tests is that your Cypress tests, as I mentioned before, are a bit declarative. So when you're saying, first go ahead and grab or get this to-do list element and then make this assertion on it, well, Cypress is going to do exactly what you said in your code in the order you mentioned them. So before it runs executes your test, it's going to look through your code, and then it's going to essentially queue up all these commands. And then when it's running the test, it's going to do everything you said in the actual order that you've written them. It's not going to go and jump around and be all async about it. No, it's going to deterministically execute every command you've stated. And this is how we go about ensuring flake-freeness, deterministic, execution of tests. And we've already kind of touched upon debuggability. We got DevTools right there. We can just pop it up, and that's nice. And so kind of expanding on what the architecture of Cypress is, I only told you half the story. So Cypress in itself, runs, the test runner runs in the same browser as your app, in the same execution loop as your app, but it also has like this Node backend because it is a desktop app. And then it can communicate with that Node backend that's running on your desktop. And there's some benefits to that. There's some use cases for that. One of those things is exposed via the Cypress execute command. And this is great for running arbitrary kind of system level commands. You could have like a little bash script or something that's going to clear your database, seed your database. Maybe you run some other scripts, kill start processes, whatever you need to do to facilitate the execution, the startup, and the close down of your tests. So for example, let's say I'm using, I have a Ruby backend, and to do that, I'm using Rake to seed my database, manage my database, and I can just run this this command line command here by just using Cypress execute, run whatever command I need to write, and I can even make I can even make assertions on that as well. I can ensure that this command executed properly with code 0, and then I can go ahead and continue, doing whatever I was doing in my tests. So this is a nice way to run arbitrary commands at the system level, because a lot of times you gotta prepare the external world for what is for what your test needs to do.
And this would run well with CIs too, right?
Exactly. I mean, you would almost definitely need to do this. I mean, if you're trying to seed your database, at least if you're not mocking your backends, you need the database to have some data, right? So this is great use case for that.
What I like about this is
Yeah.
Cypress is providing all the tooling to do all these steps that I need to do, right? Like the ability
Exactly.
this interface to do those things rather than, okay, well, I need to hand roll the database seeding part into my end-to-end testing. How do I do that? And what code do I write that in? This is nice that it all has that ability here.
Yeah, there's like a solution in every step of the process, which is awesome. So this was the execute command, and this allows you to run just whatever script, right? But if you're in JavaScript world, you probably do a lot of things JavaScripty way. So we have another command called cy.task, and this is similar to execute, but this allows you to run just JavaScript, but on your system in the Node backend. So this is outside of the browser. This is not running in the browser at all. So for example, I can declare this default DB task, and we can go ahead and see what that is. So this default DB task is just seeding my database, using some JavaScript I have written, but this is executing JavaScript on the system, not in the browser. So that's the kind of the benefit of the task command. And so, if you like writing JavaScript instead of like arbitrary bash scripts or anything like that, or don't want to do npm run or something like that, this is a great way to do that. Okay, so far we've just talked about like, the development side of things, like your everyday workflow. We saw Cypress open command, and we saw the Cypress GUI come up, and that's what you're going to be using in your day-to-day development. You can have it side by side with your editor, and it's a great workflow if you use test-driven development. And as I'm updating my tests and I'm saving my file, Cypress detects that and it will automatically rerun the test. It's like live reloading. So this is all in the realm of Cypress open command. But then there's a whole other side to Cypress, which is how do you run Cypress headlessly? How do you run it in CI, right? And that's where Cypress run command comes into place. And that's what you use to, run Cypress headlessly. And if you're running all your tests, this is the more efficient way of running all your tests. You can run your tests, with the GUI, but it's not as efficient as running it using the Cypress run command. And the other benefit of using Cypress run command is you can record your tests to the dashboard, and we'll dive into that a little bit and see some of the benefits there. So let's go and take a look. So Cypress Test Runner in itself is a standalone product, and everyone can use it. And the Cypress dashboard, actually I have one open right here, ready to go. Cypress dashboard is, it complements the test runner, and it's valuable and helpful when you're running things in CI. Because when you're running in CI, you don't have a visual version of the browser, right? You can't see what went wrong. But when you're recording to the dashboard and you get to see, you get better introspection in your CI runs. So, we have the Cypress example recipes project, which I recommend everyone kind of check out. And I'm going to actually point that out here. Use this as an opportunity. So if you're if you're new to Cypress, or if you're just curious about learning more, you have the Cypress example recipes repo. And again, Gleb coming to the rescue. He has spent a lot of time putting together these useful recipes, and along with code and everything like that, kind of help everyone out with particular use cases here. So if you're looking at how do I do like single sign-on, which is a common question. How do I handle login in general and things like that? This is a good destination for that. And this is just that project running in CI and us getting the details in the dashboard. But before I dive into the dashboard or anything like that, let me actually just demonstrate like how you would use it in the first place. So we have our to-do MVC app. There we go, it's this version. Okay, so I'm gonna close this out. Actually,
And is the dashboard the paid offering?
Yeah, so that dashboard is paid, but it's actually free. There's like a free plan that you can use for public projects. So if you have open source projects and public projects, go ahead and go ahead and use it. Yeah. Bring this up. Okay. Record key, yeah. Okay, so every project kind of gets a lower record key, and that's how we associate this particular project, you know, in the dashboard with what you got going on here. So now I copy pasted that, and then I'm going to run that whole test suite locally, but you would do this in CI, right? So if you were running Cypress in CI, you would pass in this record flag, which means, hey, record to the dashboard, and you would pass in your key, and it's going to start running your tests. And I'm only running that one test, right? But now that I did that, I can see that running in CI right here, and that's it. And so the cool part here is that, you know, I can see everything that happened, the normal standard output that you're used to seeing in CI, but I can also see a full video run of the test itself. So this is only a quick one test, so you know it runs pretty fast. But imagine if I was, you know, if I go back here and I take out this only, demonstrate that way. Great, start to run. And then I can see this this live running right here. So yeah. Actually, it's probably gonna take longer than I expected. So, anyways, that's kind of like the quick gist about the dashboard.
So that
yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, that output that you had in there in like the command line area, if we ran Cypress in our own CI, would we get that output? So we'd still have that portion of it?
Yes. So you would get the full standard output of the test run. You can even get screenshots. You can use the Cypress screenshot command to take screenshots, or we automatically take a screenshot when things fail. So that's also nice, and then you get a full video recording. So you get all this like the video run locally as well. So this has created this this MP4 file here for us, and I can just play that, and you get to see everything that happened. And again, this is great in CI because you don't get to see anything in CI. But you can imagine, like, okay, if something went wrong in CI, and you need to maybe inform the designer, like, hey, this this button is wrong, this form is wrong, something is wrong. You can just link them out to the video right here. They can come in here and they can see what's wrong. They can go ahead and fix it, and that's how we can kind of resolve things quickly. Let's see. Yeah, it's like an example of a failed test. This ran like about a year ago. This is how things will look like, if something went wrong. This is how errors are shown. And it's kind of a nice visual way of looking at things that went wrong. It's a little better than looking at standard output. And we also associate the errors with the screenshot. And there you go.
That's very cool.
Yeah. So, the dashboard in itself, it gives you better introspection to what's going on in your CI, better point of collaboration, and so on. And it kind of just makes resolving issues, easier. But there's a transparent feature of this, and that's parallelization. And we can kind of dive into that because I think that's something a lot of people can benefit from. And it's also it's one of the first features I worked on here at Cypress. So, tests take a long time, especially running UI tests. And we all wanted to make that not be the case. So the dashboard provides parallelism feature. And let's just dive in on how that works.
So let's say, you know, you want to test your fancy new app and you want to dedicate 3 machines to testing that app. So in your CI, 3 machines are going to get brought up. The first machine, whoever is the first one that's going to be brought up, they could all be coming up at the same time simultaneously, right? But the first machine is going to contact Cypress and it's going to say, hey, I'm ready for work. And then Cypress is going to say, okay, you're ready for work. What project are you working on? You know, and it's going to be like, oh, I'm working on my to-do MVC app. Here are all the spec files I have to run. And then Cypress is going to say, okay, great. Let me take a look at that. And it's going to say, okay, based on previous test runs, I can optimize how this whole test run should be ran. And then we're going to run some estimation and forecasting algorithms in the background. And then we're going to return the most optimal spec file to run first. So in this case, this first machine is going to get the login test file, and the second machine is going to get the sign up tests, and the third machine is going to get the widget tests. In the background, we've optimized what is the most efficient order of these tests, so we can make sure the test runtime is minimized. Once that's done, yeah, so let's just go. Okay, so the important secret sauce here is the actual load balancing and figuring out which test to run first or second. So as you're using the dashboard, the dashboard is gathering data about your tests, and based off that, we get this historical view of the performance of your test. In this way, we can use that data to determine, okay, we estimate that this particular spec file is going to take this amount of time. And based off that, maybe the longest running test should run first. So let's optimize that. So the first machine is going to get the longest running spec file. So we can get started on it first. So we can, finish that part out faster. And then we do this estimation and this load balancing algorithm for every single spec file you have in your project. We do this on the fly every single time your test needs to run. And so let's see the real world effects of that. So this is like a snippet view of the dashboard. We have 3 sections here. The top one is the tests running on 1 machine. The second one is tests running on 2 machines, and the tests running on 4 machines. On the first case, the tests are taking about minutes, 1 to 1 seconds, let's say. Then once we have second time half and we run 4 machines, then it gets halved again, right? But this is like a little, this is upon our example kitchen sink project, which I showed earlier. But what are the effects on a real world application? Well, the real world application that we know about is our Cypress dashboard. It's a big React application. What are the effects of that? So before parallelization, we were running tests on 1 machine, and that took about 23 minutes. Once we added parallelization and we spun up 6 machines, now we're just running under 4 minutes. That's like 83% improvement in time, which is great. And now we've actually recently increased that count from 6 to like 19 or something like that. So the tests just run super fast. And some tips I have for people that are interested in parallelization, just kind of like some guidelines that allows people to utilize it. And I see this a lot when I'm out talking to our users, is that I see that people write all their tests in 1 file. They put everything in just in 1 file. And since parallelization works at the file level, it's best to break up your tests into category-specific files. And this way we can break things up, run them on multiple machines. And then another thing I see people doing, which is an anti-pattern, and I advise people against this, is that your tests shouldn't depend on each other. They should be able to be ran and executed and passed successfully in isolation of each other. And overall, this allows you to save a lot of time and money, and that's wonderful. Everybody loves that. Are we good on time?
We've gone over, but that's okay.
I don't want to go over. So overall, we're at the end of it now. So kind of just some thoughts to leave you all with. Cypress is famous for its docs. It's one of the reasons why people love us and use us. So I highly recommend you checking out our docs. It's got way more than you ever want to know. And we're very opinionated people, so you will learn a lot there. And we have a best practices section, so I suggest people checking that out. And we also have a roadmap. We get a lot of questions about what's in the future. check that out. It's also in the docs, and I can already tell you cross-browser support is in the works. We're also working on test retries to kind of get rid of these false negatives in CI runs. So if anybody has any questions about that, they can reach out to me. And overall, again, we got tutorials, and I'll make these slides available to the audience after the show. And we have this testing workshop, which people can use to go learn about Cypress. It's all on GitHub, and it's all open source. And overall, I hope you see that we are people that are trying to vastly improve the status quo of testing on the web, and we're just getting started. So overall, thank you so much. Sorry for going over, but I hope that was helpful to everyone.
Yeah,
that was awesome.
And I'm really cool. Sure nobody minds that it was a little bit longer time because we all enjoyed the material for sure. All right, well let's get to some picks and then we'll call it good. Let's see. Let me go back to stop presenting here. Okay. So I'll go down the list here. Well, Austin, do you have any picks? No, he's shaking his head. No verbal confirmation, but visual. Okay. Bonnie, I think you have a pick, right?
I do have a pick, and actually, so I'm really excited about one of Matt's picks, so I'm going to let him go into that. But actually, I'm going to let Jesse explain my pick because I haven't finished reading it yet. But so far, I really like it, and so I would recommend that you check this out, especially if you're an entrepreneur. Jesse, you want to say, because Jesse's already read the book, and I'm still reading the book, so sorry to put you on the spot, Jesse, but
yeah. Wow. So it's actually based off of another book called Scaling Up by Fern Harnish. It's often used for accelerator groups. I actually do some volunteering with a group called EO, Entrepreneur Organization, and they have accelerator groups. But the 3 Hag Way is actually a way of trying to digest all this and put together a plan on how you might run your business.
And you can look at Breebug as an example of a business that is like taking off lately. So yeah, so that's my pick.
And Bonnie, what was the name of that book?
3 Hag Way by Shannon Burns Cisco.
All right, cool. All right, Matt, do you have a pick?
Yes, matter of fact, I have 2. The first one is the RxJS Decision Tree. It's super cool. You can actually answer some questions. It's going to tell you which operators you should use, because sometimes it's really cumbersome to figure out which operator is the best for what you're trying to achieve, right? So, and it's really,
I call it the Choose Your Own Adventure feature. Did you guys ever read Choose Your Own Adventure books back in the 80s? I love it. And that feature, they took it off for a little while because it was on the original RxJS website, and then they made a new website, and that was gone, and I was so worried, but they brought it back, and it's really, really, really a good feature if you're learning RxJS, or even if you know it. Yeah, it's just, I love it. Sorry, Matt.
Yeah. There's a cool tip about this is that if you open your phone, you can actually save as a PWA, and then you have your decision tree on the palm of your hand whenever you need. Super cool.
That's so. I didn't know that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. The second pick is RunKit. Is actually online editor that you can play with NPM packages. You can choose your version of Node and play around with when you're trying to parse some data or doing some quick sketches. It's super interesting. You can access through RunKit website, or if you go to NPM packages, you can actually open the RunKit with the package loaded and play around with Moment or any library that you're trying to figure out how it works. That's all.
And quick shout out, you guys. Matt is going to be with me on stage at NG Vikings, and that will be his like big debut. So we're excited about that.
Nice.
Congrats.
Very, very excited.
And I also second RunKit. It's very nice.
All right, and Amir, our guest, how about your picks other than indoor? Right?
Yeah, I mean, kind of last minute, but I would say mine is not technical, but I'm one of those weirdo minimalist type people. So I recommend merino wool clothing. You're interested in high quality clothing. Yeah, overall it's like antimicrobial, better temperature control, more rugged. So merino wool.
Awesome.
That's the greatest and nerdiest pick I've ever heard, and I love it. Love it.
Very cool. Very cool. All right. First off, big thank you to our, I guess they'd be guest panelists that joined us today, Matt and Jesse. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you very, very much.
For sure. It was great. I'm glad that you could make it and help us with our content. And then thanks to our guest, Amir, for taking his time, sharing this content with us. And yeah, thank you very much.
And don't forget to thank the team that writes the error messages for Cypress. Again,
Oh,
we
we'll
love
do.
them.
We'll do.
And give Gleb a big hug for us.
I will have to fly to Boston.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks again. Really appreciate it. And
Thank you.
that's a wrap. Have a good one. We'll see you next episode. Later.
Bye, everyone. Have a good one.
Bye, everybody.